Welcome, everybody. This is one of our premium podcasts where Annalouiza and I are going to try to talk a little bit about what we know about the Advanced Care Directives and what they are, how they work, and why they're important. So Annalouiza is a pro. She has done a lot of work with this.
I have. I've written a
And
book.
yeah, so I would just like to just start by asking you to define what an Advanced Care Directive is.
I define it as a living written document that can change yearly. And in the event that you are not able to communicate your wishes in at the end of life, that somebody, hopefully family, friends, or community, will know exactly what your wishes are. And it's a document that you can change your mind on at any time, but it just really tries to pinpoint all those pieces that when you get sick and you can't speak and your family's saying like, what do I do? You can have the answers to those questions given to them.
Yeah, perfect. The kinds of things that, well, the other question, of course, is who should have one, right?
Right.
And basically, at least what I've been hearing is anybody who's 18 years and older,
That is
right?
absolutely right. Yep.
Yeah, if you have the legal capacity and are legally able to make decisions like that, we're all going to die and we don't know when. So it's never too early.
It's
Yeah.
never too early. And I actually did one little small group with mothers of kids who had medical issues. Like one kid had a lot of allergies and was very aware that going to college could create a situation where her child could wind up in the emergency room and she wouldn't
Hmm.
be able to be there. And so out of all these moms, all of them had kids who had high needs, maybe riskier health issues. And if your kid is 18, they absolutely should have an advanced care directive plan because the the connection you have with that child as your child, as your blood relation, does not necessarily mean that a hospital will acknowledge that and let you help make decisions. And
Right.
so I say anybody who might end up in the hospital needs to have one.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's also the question that comes up is what is in there and what isn't. There's one that we've used called the Five Wishes,
Yep.
which I really like. It's well done, and it basically starts with what is your wish for who would you like to have be your advanced care or your care agent, basically, and it
Hmm.
gives some really good direction and instruction about what that person could be or should be, and who that could be and should be, and who it shouldn't be. For instance, it says you don't want to have your doctor be your advanced your care agent, right? And you may also want to consider whether your family will have the capacity
Hmm.
and if you're sick or dying to emotional capacity to be able to deal
Right.
with it. So
Right.
that's also and so it gives you some really good things to think about. And then
Yeah.
it talks about other things like what kind of care do you want?
Right.
And do you want comfort care? Do you want to do not resuscitate? All those different pieces of what kind of care you'd really like. What else is in there that you remember?
Well, I was going to say, I love the Five Wishes. My sister, who passed away a few years, we had multiple copies of the Five Wishes. Like every year, we seemed to, add a little bit more of information to it. And I liked that document as a kind of a springboard to
Right.
entertain these questions, right? These thoughts about what would you like. And for my sister, she really wanted no intubation, no dialysis. She knew that she had a kidney that was failing. She was very specific about the kind of care that she wanted, but it was all encompassed in this, like, would you like to be intubated or not? DNRs, very broad kind of decision making that friends and family could take care of, right? And so like she wrote down that she wanted Neil Diamond playing while she died, and that she really wanted to make sure her lips were being moistened as she was in the hospital because it was so dry.
Mm.
So there's like the very broad medical questions that can be answered and written down. And then there's like the very intimate pieces around, would you like music? Would you like prayers, would you like a priest or a chaplain? So that was a really beautiful way for her to express what she really wanted for me to do for her. And, since then I've started actually doing more than the 5 wishes, but using those as
Hmm.
really good conversation starters for folks.
Yeah. So what other things would you include that go beyond what the 5 wishes say?
Well, there are many actually. I would really try to talk about the different scenarios that could play out for your health issues, right? Like, we're not going to know exactly how we're going to die. And I, for instance, love to hike by myself. And so there's always a chance I'm going to fall and hurt myself out in the wilderness. And in my advanced care directive plan, I've said, like, if I am more than 15 minutes away from a hospital, like, please just let me die. Like, it's okay. Like, don't try to, truck me in. Now, whether or not that's actually going to happen, I still might be flown in from some 14er, but as soon as my daughter gets the call, she can say, she does not want to be kept alive at, whatever cost. And the other piece in there is, like, if I fall and hit my head at the parking lot in Target, like, please call 911, because those
Right.
are very different situations and it could mean a different recovery for me. So there's those details that we can talk about. During COVID, I had a lot of folks doing their advanced care directive plans because we were all really afraid of going to hospitals and being intubated or being, on oxygen machines long term. So lots of people said, if I get COVID and if it's that bad, please don't do that to me because it feels like that might not be how I want to die.
Right.
Um, the other pieces that I really love about doing an advanced care directive plan is choosing the people that you would love to have near you and the people who you would not like to have near you. I've been in family situations where there's friction and folks just show up because they think that the dying person wouldn't mind. But
Hmm.
yet, there are families, and I can think of a lot of different scenarios, from estranged family members to LGBTQ families people whose families haven't accepted them and who
Yeah.
may not actually want uh, blood relations to be in that same room if death is actually imminent. So I feel like advanced care directive planning gives you, like, the space to think about all these different possibilities
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
choose. And there's a statistic, and I think it must have changed by now, but it's like 80% of US citizens want to die at home, and only 20% do get to die at home. And that's the other piece of an advanced care directive plan that's different from the 5 wishes, is that you can say, I would prefer to be taken home to die, like,
Yeah.
point
Yeah.
blank. So
Yeah. You also were reading just before we started an advanced care directive that included very specific drugs and amounts of drugs, and
yeah,
everything. I mean, you could get that specific with it. You can say,
yeah,
these are the drugs I would want it to be given to me in this amount at this time. You can get that specific with it if you know enough, and you can find out enough if you've got a good care team or a good doctor you can
right.
work with.
And
Yeah,
that's the thing that doesn't seem so out of line for anything, because here's the thing. As a living human being, you discover that you have a really bad allergy to NyQuil, and you feel
yeah,
horrible and you get nauseated or whatever it is that it has. If your family members don't actually know this information and you're dying and there's a potential, like, let's just give her NyQuil to see if this helps, like, that could actually become a
yeah,
really horrible
yeah,
storm. But you telling or noting that this is a problem will actually help you. It will give
sure.
you a better quality of end of life.
Hmm. Great, perfect. That's really good. So we have talked mostly what's included, and I think I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Can you think of anything else that's included or should be included in the advanced care directives? I mean, you can also attach different documents to it. You can attach your will, or you can have your will and trust documentation. You can have information about, insurance, all all the things that your loved ones might want to be able to access, or at least some pointer to those things, so that they
Right.
know where to find it. Right.
Well, and I think that an advanced care directive plan, if you're writing one up, here's the essentials. Like, you need to appoint one or two people to be your team who will have this knowledge to share with doctors or a medical team, right? So
Hmm.
choose somebody. It doesn't have to be a family member. It doesn't have to be a spouse. Find somebody who aligns with your own values,
Yeah.
because if you get in a situation where you would not want to be kept alive at whatever cost, and the person you've assigned says do everything possible because we don't want her to die, there's an alignment issue there that needs to be discussed prior to having that moment. So picking a person or persons who know your values, detailing as much as you can as to what is it that you are willing to accept at the end of life, or what is an absolutely no-go, and then have it be you can play around with it too, and like,
Yeah.
if I'm home, I would like this person to visit. I would like a harpist. I would love, my acupuncturist to come by if possible. This is the name of the person. And then have it signed by two witnesses, and then deliver this document to your medical team and your friends and family.
Yeah, yeah, and meet on a regular basis to talk about it.
Right.
It's also part of what you're saying about the person who can be this healthcare agent. Sometimes it's called a healthcare power of attorney or healthcare
Or
agent.
proxy, health
And
proxy.
yeah, is their their capacity, their emotional capacity, right?
Mhm.
As if you feel
Mhm.
like really think about, are these people going to be able to have the
Champion you.
capacity, yeah,
Yeah,
to champion me and not to be overwhelmed by grief and loss. And of course,
right,
everybody's going to be grieving,
right,
but some people are better at handling that, and you probably know that about these people, and you should ask them. you know,
right.
make sure.
There's a
make sure
conversation that takes place before they sign this document for you, right?
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and what I ended up doing for the one I did a while back was that I had a person who I know is very clear speaker and isn't afraid of a medical team, like doesn't get, like, okay, you can do whatever you want. It's more
Yeah.
like, no, my friend really wants this. And she was assigned to be the person who would interact with the medical. And there's another person who knows all those same details, but would actually be helping the kids
Mm,
interact with the whole team. Like, if something really were to be going on that I was at the end of my life, I would want this other person to hold space and like, as a little net, continue to hold everybody together. So that's how I made my team play out like this. But yeah, it could be a really good friend. It could be a neighbor. It could be. I think in some states, I know in Denver, I have heard of people who they will charge for the service of keeping up with you and your advanced care directive plan, and would show up for you if you had no one else to champion you. And by the way, like, this doesn't mean like this as soon as you break a leg and you're in the hospital that this is going to actually get put into play. It means that when something has happened, either by disease or by an accident, that you are unable to speak your with on your own and state your choices, this document helps people like have a roadmap to whatever's going on for you, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's a another piece of that is the that can be attached to it, or can be also in your file or on your refrigerators. What they call the post form,
That's right.
which also has it's the physician's orders for life-saving treatment,
Mhm.
and those can be put up that says you don't want resuscitation, you don't want to be resuscitated, or you want basic care. You decide, and you go to your physician, and they say, "Yeah, this makes sense," and they sign off on it, and that's. But those generally only are brought into play if you've got a terminal diagnosis.
That's right.
So not normally, that's not something you would have otherwise. The other part of that reminded me is that uh, taking making sure your doctor knows about it is really important, because
That's right.
they can also help you with understanding what's going to be necessary, what's going to be needed. And yeah, there were some other things that I thought of, but I'll see if they come
That's
back.
okay. No, so your doctors, your spouse, if you're
Yeah,
in a partnership, and your children,
children, yeah,
or
other
anyone
relatives.
who cares so much about you that who would want to follow your lead on this end
Hmm.
of life piece, right? Like,
Yeah, I know one other thing that came up when I was thinking about that is that we've had people in classes that I've done speak to the fact that some people are very alone, lonely, don't
yeah,
have anybody like that. They
right.
can't think of anybody like that. And there is, you said there's people you can hire. There's
Mm-hmm.
also, I found a link to and we'll put links like this in our podcast notes. Found a link to a place that does pro bono work in that
Mm-hmm.
regard. So there's a group of attorneys who is offered to be a healthcare agent or a power of attorney to help people like that who don't have anybody in their lives. And sometimes they want to be paid, and sometimes they'll do it for
Mm-hmm.
pro bono for free.
Mm-hmm.
So one other thing that you can put in there, and that is part of the 5 wishes, is what you want to have happen after you die. You
Right.
know,
And the five wishes does actually go through that. An
yeah,
advanced care directive hasn't, I've never seen it happen like fluidly, but yes, it does
yeah,
ask you like what do you want for after the body is ready to
yeah.
roll, right? Like
So not only the disposition of the body itself, like if you have a choice, there's many choices now. And
mm-hmm.
so you can make that choice. You can actually arrange for it ahead of time, all that kind of thing. But also like memorial services. What would you
Right.
like to have people do for your memorial? You can even outline all that. You can put at least basics of that and maybe some kind of link
Mm-hmm.
to, or
Yeah.
some kind of pointer to this person, and maybe a whole new person, right?
Yeah.
Somebody that you know is a good organizer and a good party person.
That's right. That's
And
right.
say, and then again, invite them in, say, you willing to do this with me? And here's what I'd like to see happen. So poetry, music, friends, all those things, dancing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, advanced care planning is for you to kind of get a good idea of what's important to you. Even though you may be dying or be dead, if it matters to you, it matters. And it should be spoken or written, right? And
Yeah.
transmitted to others who would care for you. And, even after death, there is work that can be done to support you. Like, absolutely. Like, which poets do you want to have in attendance and music and it's just all very beautiful. It's a ritual that needs to be celebrated more and more in our communities at large.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking to ritual, there may be rituals you would like to have
Hmm.
either in your space while you're at the end of life or after. And that may be, again, music or prayers or any kind. There's many, many kinds of rituals that one could put together that are always very meaningful and can be really
Hmm.
useful. And again, just what, like you said, what matters to you and what will matter to you in that time.
Right. So, and I think people might also be kind of wondering, is this the same as a will? Is this as a, testament or a living will? Like, how is this different? And it is different in the sense that we are looking specifically at your wishes around your body,
Yeah.
right? It's not about the estate. It is not about your finances. It's not about, um, I can't think of anything else right now, but it is like, do you want to give your organs, to the school or whatever? Like, it's all here.
Yeah.
And once it's notarized and signed by two witnesses, like it's an actual legal document.
Yeah. Some states require notarizing, some states don't.
Hmm.
Most states require witnesses,
Right.
but again, look to your own state. Some states have totally different requirements, and some states don't even honor them. So make
Hmm.
sure you check your rules in your state to know what's required.
Right.
There's another thing that's come up, and that we were just talking about a little before this, is there is an advanced care for dementia directive
Right.
available,
Right.
and we'll put a link in
Beautiful.
the yeah, we'll put a link in the notes to this beautiful document that's very,
Hmm.
very concise. It's got lots and lots of details and really helps you think about all the parts of what it would be like and what you'd want to have happen if you get to a point where you're no longer able to make decisions because of
Hmm.
more advanced dementia or Alzheimer's.
Hmm.
And one of the things it says at the very beginning is if you're able now, but you have this possibility, through your family or through, it's a perfect thing to have as kind of an addendum, if you will, to your advanced care directive. And even if you're just beginning to have signs of this, you still have the ability to make these decisions. It's time to do it
That's
right
right.
now, right? And I love this document because it really does go step by step all the things that you would want to have happen, including do you want to live at home? Do you want to, when should you stop driving?
Mhm.
All these really important decisions that you can put down again, same thing as before. We're talking about really express your wishes for what
Mm,
you'd like to have happen. And anybody who's dealt with an Alzheimer's patient or family member
mm,
knows how difficult that can be, and especially for the people around you. And so if you outline this, you're again, just like with the Advanced Care Directive, you're giving your loved ones guidance, and they
mhm.
don't have to guess, and they don't have to argue.
That's right.
And that they really can know this is really, they said this is what they want, and this is what we're
Mhm,
going to do for them. And again,
mhm,
same thing, you need to have people assigned as your agents that know what you are asking for and that will
mhm.
honor that, honor that, not change their mind or not decide they know better in the future.
Yeah. And, to that detail there too, like I want to assure people that once you have this document written, you can change your mind. That's why I call it a living document.
Yeah.
The dementia one, not so much maybe, or actually it does have a little chance to like revisit some things. But an advanced care directive plan, every year you might decide, well, maybe I do want to get picked up by 911 in the mountains. Like, I could change my mind. So, in this moment, the person you are, how do you want the end of your life to appear? And that's
Yeah.
what we're choosing for, right? So in dementia and Alzheimer's, how would you like your loved ones to both care for you and be cared for?
Right. Oh, that's so important. That second part is very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're getting there. So I'm just wondering if you could talk about anything any experiences you've had that are examples of what happens when you don't have an advanced care directive, to kind of help people know how important this is.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of instances where one thing that happens kind of universally for folks who don't have it is family members will end up um, kind of choosing sides about what to do with mom or dad.
Hmm.
And if there's no direction, then there becomes a fight about, well, I want them to do everything that's possible for them. And the other one's like, I think mom really wanted to die. Like, let's just keep it simple. And so that's a really painful place to be for folks.
Yeah.
Right. The other one is like not having a directive and thinking that people know your values and then winding up in the hospital, not able to speak for yourself, and there's nobody around. So the hospitalist and a nurse, and just generally anybody around will make the decisions for you. And what I have always just worried about is like the Good Samaritans, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a part of me that doesn't want to be kept alive at whatever cost for a lot of reasons. And I have my people, my proxies will totally honor that. But if nobody at the hospital knows this, they'll say, surely she's going to want to live. Like, let's just like go in and do everything we possibly can. So that's the downside to not having a plan in place. And not to say like that might not still happen, because if I'm in the woods and bonk my head and nobody knows who I am, right? So
Right.
that is a potential still, but at least I know that once I get identified, they'll know there'll be a different roadmap.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, have you heard of any kind of issues that have arisen from a lack of an
Yeah.
advanced care?
Yeah. Similarly, when people are, the families have different opinions. That's been one that I've witnessed, and that they ended up being a really um, difficult. I mean, it's already a difficult time, right? So it
Right.
ends up adding more difficulty and complexity and
Yeah.
arguing and conflict to a situation that's already fraught. And so people are there, they're all wanting to do the best. They all
Mhm.
think they know the best, but they haven't ever been told, or they,
Mhm.
what in the case that I heard about, this woman had been taking care of her mom for years and years and years, and her mom had said specifically what she wanted to have happen and told her, but they never wrote it down, right?
Yeah.
And because her mom was kind of beyond the capacity to do that, and so, but then when she got really ill, she was in the hospital, end of life. Her brother showed up, who had never been there before, and hadn't helped her at all. But they were
Mhm.
like, "Oh, you must do everything. You must do everything. You have
Mhm.
to keep her alive."
Mhm.
And she had to argue with them, and it created this huge rift. And in fact, then, you talk about will and all that stuff, that those can also, if you don't have a will in place or a good trust fund or whatever, if you haven't taken care of those kind of things, that also creates a place where people can conflict and argue, fight about money, and that
Yeah.
gets really, really ugly really fast. And so I think that's, it's just part of the part of the package,
Right.
to take care of your beloveds and let them know this is what I really want. It's
Hmm.
it's the wonderful thing
And
we can do.
I think I had my Advanced Care Directive certification program, I think about 10 years ago, and I don't remember quite where this landed, but if you're in a situation where you might have a family member who's been discussing, like, maybe there's a terminal illness and there's a lot more conversations happening around the kitchen table. In some states, if you have an audio recording or a video recording, which we easily
Mm,
all can do nowadays with our phones, you can have information stored that way and shown as a documentation. Like, I don't think mom really wanted to go to the hospital. Like, that's why I didn't call 911 or whatever, right? Like, I mean, I say this very also, be careful with that. Check your state,
hmm.
make sure that's allowed. But I think that for some instances, like, you can share information about what they were saying, right? It's
Yeah,
better to
yeah,
have people sign a document, but
yeah. Well, one of the things that was both in the Dementia Care Directive document we read, but also I think this is true elsewhere, is talk to your doctors about it. Talk to an
Mhm.
elder care attorney to make sure everything you're doing is legal where you are,
Right.
and make sure all those things are done legally and signed in whatever way they need to be, so that,
Mhm.
again, so that your care is taken, that you are taken care of in the way that you really want to be taken care
That's right.
of. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that as folks in this country where we tend to be uncomfortable talking about death, it's so hard to even think about planning around it. And yet it is the one thing that is inevitable, and it is the one thing that you could gift to your family, an easier road, knowing what your wishes are.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. It can be
Hmm.
so beautiful for folks to go in and say, like, my sister had told me for years exactly what she wanted. She didn't deviate much from that original. I think I have all the 5 wishes documents that we had worked on over the years, so I've kept them all. And but it was really nice that unfortunately, every time she ended up at the hospital was when we would revisit it to just check to
Right.
make sure everything was still okay. And it was. And I appreciated that when she got really sick and was no longer speaking, that I held my documents, close by. And, doctors would come in and ask, my father would ask. And I was like, this says that she doesn't want this. And I'm going
Hmm.
to just stand by it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I am grateful that she 100% said yes to, oh, she said yes to me as her health proxy. And I said yes to helping her finish this life in the way she really wanted to.
Mm, yeah, you are a perfect example of what we'd all hope to find. Yeah.
And I will also say this, it has not been an easy road. My sister chose not to have dialysis. Her
Mm,
kidney was failing. Dialysis is a very easy thing to choose. She could have probably prolonged her life for X amount of years. And both my mother and father were very angry that I followed her rules. That
mm,
because even occasionally my father will say, if she had made me her proxy, I would never have let her die. And so there's a
wow.
little bit of just like, how dare you have made that choice? And to me, it was just like, it wasn't my choice. It was my sister's choice. I just was her mouthpiece.
Yeah.
So when you find that you are ready to pick your proxies and you have these conversations and you tell them, like, you know, are you ready to not only champion me in a medical setting, but this might seem a little outrageous to my family. Would you be okay holding that spot without feeling uncomfortable or
Yeah.
cowed by it and like, oh no, I can't do this. I guess I'll just change my mind, because there's no easy road.
Sure. Very true. Yeah. Well, thank you. This has been a really good conversation, I think. I think it'll
So
be,
fun.
yeah, I hope it's really helpful to people. There will be links, like I said, in the notes to some of these things we've talked about. So please get in touch with us if you have
Yeah,
any other questions. Annalouiza
absolutely.
does a class that we'll
We
also
both
put a
have
link to.
classes.
Yeah. So we have classes to help people planning for end of life, and
Yep.
Annalouiza's is for the specifically for Advanced Care
Advanced Care
Directive help. So,
Directive. Absolutely. So yeah, reach out, and if you have any more questions after you subscribe to this, like we would love to help you.
yeah, blessings. Take care.
Adios.